Between 1845 and 1852, 1 million Irish people starved to death. Not because Ireland had no food, because the food was leaving. Every single day, while people died in the fields, British cargo ships were being loaded at Irish ports with grain, cattle, butter, and pork. Armed British soldiers stood guard over those ships to make sure the starving Irish could not touch the food that grew on their own land. In 1847, the deadliest year of the famine, Ireland exported enough food to feed every person who died of starvation that year. And the British official responsible for managing famine relief, Charles Trevelyan, wrote that the famine was the judgment of God on an indolent people. Then he was knighted. Ireland in 1844 was one of the most densely populated countries in Europe. Over 8 million people, most of them tenant farmers on land owned by British landlords. The majority of Irish tenant farmers had been pushed onto land so small and so poor that only one crop would reliably grow on it. The potato. It fed families. It fed children. It was the difference between life and death for over 3 million Irish people who ate little else. In the autumn of 1845, a water mold called Phytophthora infestans arrived in Ireland from North America. It moved through the potato fields like a wave. Plants that were green one week were black and liquid the next. Families who opened their potato stores found nothing but rot and stench. Their entire food supply for the winter gone. In weeks, the British government response was not silence. It was something worse than silence. It was ideological. Prime Minister John Russell and his Treasury Secretary Charles Trevelyan believed that providing free food relief to Ireland would create dependency and interfere with the natural operation of the market. They believed the famine was the market correcting itself. They believed that if the British government stepped in, Irish people would never learn to be self-sufficient. So while 1 million people were dying, the official British position was that the market would solve the problem. The market did not solve the problem. The market exported the food. In 1847, the British government ran a public works scheme in Ireland. Not a food distribution scheme, a public works scheme. Men who were already dying of starvation were paid wages to break stones and build roads. Wages too low to buy adequate food. And the food they might have bought with those wages was leaving the country on British ships anyway. Meanwhile, the grain convoys moved through Irish villages under armed escort. Carts loaded with Irish wheat and Irish oats moving through streets where people had collapsed from hunger. There is testimony from the period describing the convoys passing bodies on the road. The food and the bodies in the same frame. One going to the ships, one going to the ground. Some people tried to help. The Society of Friends, the Quakers, established soup kitchens that fed hundreds of thousands of people at the height of the famine. Private charities from America, Canada, and across Europe sent food and money. And in 1847, from Oklahoma Territory in America, the Choctaw Nation collected $170 for Irish famine relief. The Choctaw, who had walked their own trail of tears just 16 years earlier, who knew what it was to lose everything to a government's indifference, sent what they had, $170, from people who had almost nothing, to strangers on the other side of the world, because they understood something about what the Irish were experiencing that the British Parliament apparently could not. By 1852, the famine had killed 1 million people. Another million had emigrated during the famine years alone, on ships so overcrowded and so inadequately provisioned that 1 in 5 immigrants died during the crossing. They called them coffin ships. People who had survived the famine died on the boats they took to escape it. And those who reached America, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, found themselves in slum tenements with signs and windows that read "No Irish Need Apply." They had survived a famine in which their government exported their food. They had survived a sea crossing that killed 1/5 of the people who attempted it. And they arrived to discrimination in the country that was supposed to be their salvation. But they stayed, and their descendants built some of the most powerful Irish-American political communities in the world, fueled by a generational anger that has never fully dissolved. The official British position for most of the last 170 years has been that the famine was a natural disaster, a tragedy, an unfortunate convergence of blight and circumstance. In 1997, Prime Minister Tony Blair issued a statement describing the famine as a defining event in the history of Britain and Ireland. He expressed deep regret. No formal apology, no reparations, No acknowledgement that armed soldiers stood guard over food convoys moving through a starving country. Charles Trevelyan, the man who called the famine God's judgment on an indolent people, received a knighthood from the British government in 1848. While the famine was still killing people, he was knighted while they were dying. That is not a tragedy. That is a policy. And here is what makes this story different from every other famine in history. The food was there. It was always there. In 1847, Ireland exported over 4,000 livestock ships. It exported grain. It exported dairy. It exported enough food to feed every person who starved to death that year. The famine did not happen because Ireland had no food. It happened because the colonial economic system decided that British market principles mattered more than Irish lives. 1 million people are in mass graves across Ireland today because of that decision. Not because of a fungus, because of a choice. Do you want us to keep naming the people who made these choices? Charles Trevelyan designed a relief system that prioritized ideology over human life and was knighted for it. Prime Minister John Russell maintained the laissez-faire policy that allowed the export convoys to continue throughout the worst years of the famine. These are documented. These are confirmed. These are on the record. Comment yes below if you want every name in every future video. Now I need to ask you directly. Did you know this story before today? Did you know that food was leaving Ireland under armed guard while people starved? Did you know that the Choctaw Nation, fresh from their own trail of tears, sent money to help people they had never met? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Because this story belongs to the Irish diaspora in America, Canada, and Australia, and to every person who has ever been told that a famine is simply an act of nature. Share this video right now. Someone in your life thinks the Irish famine was just a potato disease. Show them the grain convoys. Show them the armed soldiers. Show them the knighthood. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, search official The Odd Archive, and turn on notifications. Follow us on TikTok, search official The Odd Archive. Because the next story we are dropping, the government responsible has been hiding documents about it for longer than most countries have existed. And we found them.